Hello, fellow griever. This is the Leftover Pieces Suicide Loss Conversations podcast, and I am Melissa, your host. This week, you have found yourself with me for one of my shorter, solo Down the Rabbit Hole episodes. Here, I take you with me on a journey of sorts, through thoughts in my own griefy mind. Some days, I may tackle topics as if I am in Alice's shoes, slaying the Jabberwocky. And on others, I may end up in my own pool of tears. Or I may just go a bit sideways and paint the proverbial roses red. But I always promise an adventure. So let's dive down the rabbit hole and see just what sorts of madness we might discover together. I am glad you have joined me, because while I do know how lonely this grief is, I also believe we needn't be alone. Welcome. Hello, fellow griever, and welcome to Season 5, Episode 15 of the Leftover Pieces Suicide Loss Conversations podcast, and I'm Melissa, your host. And yes, today we are down the rabbit hole to do another installment of What Am I Watching? Or in the case of this episode, I'm calling it Movies, Shows, and Books. Oh my, what to watch or not. So I'm going to talk about movies, TV shows, readables. I say readables because they're not necessarily all books. They are, except for one. And then a quick other category. I do list the links to the other 4 episodes I've done where I talk about mostly movies and TV shows in those. I don't know if I talk about any books. And there was one in season 1, one in season 2. They both happen to be episode 17 in those seasons. And then in season 4, early on, I think episode 7 or 8, I did one. And then towards the end, I did one also. So there's 4 other episodes out there that talk about movies and shows. And I mostly, for at least a couple of those, concentrated on shows or movies that tackled suicide loss and grief specifically, or the topic of suicide. I think the last time around, I deviated a little bit and did some other types of programming, feel-good shows, grief in general, things like that. And in this one, I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a mishmash of all of it, I think. I'm going to tackle some movies, some TV shows. My list is probably a little smaller than it's been in the past, but I'm going to also talk about books and a magazine, as well as, and I'm going to start off by telling you about an app that I think is a must-have for every griever, and really for anyone who has had excessive trauma and feels like they need to be aware of what might be in a show that they're going to watch or a movie. So I won't go into great detail about it, but I think I've talked about it before. It's on my resource page, as are a lot of the things that I might talk about. But the app is called Does the Dog Die? And it is a website, but it's also an app that you can have on your phone. And it's basically a trigger warning app. It will allow you to type in by title of the movie or show to see what triggers might be in it. It'll also let you type in the trigger and look for things that don't have those triggers and things like that. So in this case, if it was, I don't want to see things that have suicide scenes or mention of suicide loss or something, you could look for that. If there's a movie you're about to watch, you can type it in to see if it has any of these things in it, because believe me, you would think in today's world, all new movies and shows would have warnings and or talk about the content, and they don't. They just don't. Some of them absolutely neglect a giant part of the plot. I think it's probably marketing, but let's get started. I'm going to talk about movies first, and I purposely kind of went back into the archives a little bit. I kind of went older. I've talked about a lot of the newer movies that have been out. if I didn't do full reviews on them, I talked about them and mentioned them. So there have been a lot mentioned. And I tackle a couple here that I haven't talked about before. And one of which was new to come across my attention is a 2002 movie called Love, Liza. The star of this movie is Seymor Hoffman. I absolutely loved him and, hate that he's not with us anymore. It also stars, and I shouldn't say stars, she's a supporting actress in this particular movie, Kathy Bates, who's amazing. But to try to give it as short of a synopsis as I can without giving a bunch of spoiler alerts, Seymor Hoffman plays a man who has, at the onset of the movie, we become aware that he's only a few days past the funeral of his wife who died by suicide. They don't have any children. It's just him, his wife's mother. So his mother-in-law is Kathy Bates. And it's an amazing, deep, I'm going to watch it again, it's deep enough, story about what this man goes through after experiencing this traumatic loss. And it doesn't have what I would consider a lot of warnings to it. You're not going to see flashbacks or content that's disturbing. Language is the only thing that I would flag it for. And for the sake of this podcast episode, if I talk about language potentially being an issue, it will mean the same thing as I'm saying now, which means they might say committed suicide versus the safer, better option of died by suicide or ended their life. So they might reference killing someone's self or things like that. So in other words, language that is maybe a little insensitive or not very current, although we see it in current things as well. So while there may be some of that language, other than that, there's not any real trigger warnings. And I found it to be very enlightening because it's 22 years since this came out. And if I didn't know better, I would obviously know it's not current because Seymor Hoffman's in it. But if I didn't know better, I would think the movie could be made now. And when I say that, it means from the standpoint of what he experienced in the outside world as far as support goes from his loss. And it gives a really inside view of what several different people are going through, particularly the husband and the mother, how vastly different what they're going through is as far as how they're experiencing their grief. And especially with the main character, how he's received, how he appears to have some support on the outside. But then when you realize the time frame of the movie is very short, like I don't want to ruin it, but the time frame of the movie is like a month after loss. The whole movie occurs within that first month. When you realize how short it is, and then you go back and realize the things that were said to him and how quickly people changed their mind about supporting him, it felt very relevant. So it's good enough. I'm going to watch it again in the very near future. It's in my queue, and I'm going to watch it again because you know how that works with movies. We're able to unpeel more of it once we've seen it. So it's a recommend. It's not a recommend for a night that you want something light and easy to watch, but it's a recommend because it wasn't difficult to watch from a trigger standpoint. And it really gives a powerful insight into grief and kind of helps you feel a little bit more normal in the fact that, this can really spin us up. This can take us out like nothing else. And I think that he does an amazing job. I saw a comparison at the beginning of the movie or somewhere that said this movie should do for Hoffman what Leaving Las Vegas did for Nicolas Cage. So anybody that's in my generation that's familiar with Leaving Las Vegas, right there, I knew it was going to be intense, and it was, but intense in all the right ways. So I'm going to move on to the second one, and this one I have put off watching. I knew about it. I watched it a long time ago, probably not long after it came out in 1998, and so we're only talking, 4 years older than the other one I just talked about. And this one is called What Dreams May Come, and it stars Robin Williams. The entire, prelude to the movie is kind of over within the first 8 minutes of it as far as understanding what the character is going to be going through. And I think the major parts happen within the first like 10 or 13 minutes. So, and you can read the basic plot of this movie if you look it up. So I don't want to be like redundant and just repeat what synopsises are if you look at them on the internet. But it's about a man who, Robin Williams, dies after the death of his children. He's married to his soulmate and the love of his life. And in the wake of a 4-year span of her losing her children and her husband, all to accidents, she ends her life. Now, there's nothing graphic around her. You just know she ended her life. But here's the thing. When I first saw this movie, I remember saying, I didn't really get it. I didn't really like it. It was weird. Like, I remember saying all those things. And it is a very fantasy-based movie. The wife is played by Annabella Sciarella. I know I've butchered her name. I apologize to her for that. And the supporting actor that plays with Robin Williams is Cuba Gooding Jr. So it's really good. It's very fantasy-based. It kind of explores the afterlife. And, it's obviously this writer and director's take on what we could possibly be in for. But I wanted to watch it because I knew it explored the suicide of his wife and how he essentially is kind of, here's what I took from it. He's going to hell. He goes to hell to try to be with his wife. So it does tackle that topic kind of do we go somewhere else when we end our life? And I personally don't believe that. That's not my belief system, but that's a theme that a lot of people think about. And so I found it interesting, the take on it. I also found the ending extremely interesting. And my biggest takeaway was that how differently I perceive this film now than I did 25 years ago. And a lot of that isn't just my age. A lot of it is the lenses that I now look at things through, which is a mother who's lost a child to suicide, and death and suicide and the afterlife. And all of those topics are part of my world now. And so I was able to perceive this movie completely differently than I did before. And the jury's still out on whether I really love it or not. But I found it extremely interesting and thought-provoking. So if that's the kind of movie that sounds interesting to you, that's one to consider. I also have mentioned this one before, The Roadrunner, or it's called Roadrunner. Sorry, not The Roadrunner. It's called Roadrunner, the story of Anthony Bourdain. And if you loved Anthony Bourdain at all, enjoyed his style from No Reservations and especially from Parts Unknown, his CNN more recent series, this is very much an Anthony Bourdain style documentary, even though it was made after his death about his life. There's a lot of archived footage of him in there, a lot of voiceover from archived footage of him. So in ways, it's like he participated in it. And it's everything that you would expect Anthony Bourdain product to be. It's about him rushing to things and rushing away from things, and the searching and the loving and the longing and the hurting and the wondering and the wandering and all of the things and the living. So it's about all of the things, and it's kind of rough and raw and real. And yes, some of the interviews, they will talk about how he ended his life. But other than language, there's nothing in it but it's thought-provoking and amazing. So then I have a couple of honorable mentions, and I'm going to have that in every category. You'll see it again in the show notes where I actually put HM next to the honorable mentions. But the three honorable mentions that I have in the movie category, one is a movie called Coco that is an animated movie that came out in 2017. And it is about a little boy who ends up venturing in a Hispanic little boy who ends up venturing into the afterlife to find the reason that music has been banned in his family. And it's a really cute plot line, but it deals with how in this movie in particular, Mexican culture reveres and honors their dead and their ancestors and how they're still a part of their life and their living. So from that standpoint, I really like Coco. Another one is still Magnolias. It came out in 1989. And if you haven't seen it in a long time, again, I'm going to challenge you that these movies now are seen through a different lens into our heart and mind. And knowing that the main plot of the movie is really just about this small town community and a wedding, but then the deeper plot becomes about the illness that takes the daughter, who's played by Julia Roberts, and then you're dealing with grief and loss. So it's a movie about life and friendship and small communities and death and life after death, even for a mother and a husband. And the cast, if you're not aware of this movie, is star-studded. Julia Roberts and Sally Fields play the main two leads as the mother and daughter. But how do you call Dolly Parton and Shirley MacLaine and Olympia Dukakis and Daryl Hannah supporting actresses? Like, it's a cast full of lead actresses, and the men that support them in this movie are every bit as amazing. So it's worth watching just because it's about life and death and everything in between. Another one the last one I'm going to mention in the movie category is the movie Big Chill. And it's from 1983, so it's really old. Like, I was probably not even, or barely, I was about to go into high school at that point. I remember watching it multiple times back then, and I'm going to confess, I made it about 10 or 15 minutes into this movie, and I stopped it. And I say that I've watched it before, but it's probably been 4 decades since I've watched it. I used to own the soundtrack and listen to it regularly. And the reason I'm talking about this one, since I didn't finish, I barely got started watching it, is because I want you guys to know that even over 7.5 years into my journey, we're going to be 8 years in August, things like this can still happen to me. And I feel like I can watch and listen to just about anything, but even I once in a while find something that makes me go, yeah, no, not right now. And strangely enough, The Big Chill did that for me, but in a way that most probably wouldn't expect. The plot of the movie, and it's interesting because back then they wouldn't have talked about suicide in the blurb for the movie, but the main reason these friends get together at a vacation home, I think somewhere in South or North Carolina, is they're getting together. I think it's 7 of them getting together for the funeral of their college friend. Their college friend's name is Alex, and I, for the life of me, didn't have any memory of that. So to get through all of those beginning scenes where they're dealing with everybody coming into town and the memorial service and the funeral and the after party that happens after a funeral, and all they're doing is saying Alex, and I don't understand why Alex did this, or using the word Alex and died and committed suicide, and because they use that language in the same sentence. It was like overstimulation of the word Alex and watching the funeral and hearing about suicide. And because that's my son's name, it just, in that moment I just thought, I don't think I can watch this whole movie. And there was other things that were interesting to me that were starting to kind of trigger me too, all around the idea of this Alex and 7 friends and friends talking about it was just, it's like I said, we never know what's going to be the thing for us. And so I will watch it again at some point, I think, but I just thought I would bring that up, is that I had every intention of talking about whether they handled the topic well or not, because I have no memory of whether they did, but I can't tell you guys because I couldn't finish watching it. So now I'm going to move on to TV shows and series. I've talked about The Bear before, but only 1 season was out then. And all I have to say is The Bear, The Bear, The Bear. Like, watch The Bear. It's an FX series on Hulu. I think that's the only place you can see it, is either on FX or streaming on Hulu. There's currently 2 seasons out, but spoiler alert, season number 3 is coming out, I think, the end of June. So very close to the time of this. And there are more seasons planned. And season 1 was phenomenal. Season 2 was better, if that's possible. It handles, you can go back and read or look at the other review I've done, listen to it, and see and look it up, but they tackle restaurant life and friendship and the suicide loss of his brother and all things surrounding that in such a poignant way. The guests, the regular cast is amazing, and the supporting cast is phenomenal. So I won't go into a lot of detail since I've talked about it before, but Jeremy Allen White is amazing in this series, as are everybody else that stars in it. So, The Bear. The other series I have talked about briefly, like I listed it in one of my other episodes, but I don't think I had watched the whole series at that point, and now I have. There's only 3 seasons of this out, and there will never be any more from what we've been told. It's called Dead to Me. Stars and was written, produced, and starred in by Christina Applegate. At the time of this recording, it's available on Netflix, all 3 seasons. Both women in this, Christina Applegate and, I'm drawing a blank right now. It's going to come to me in a minute. Linda Cardellini, I believe. I don't know. It just came to me. Linda Cardellini is the co-star, and these 2 women play, their chemistry is amazing. They play friends who didn't know they were going to be friends, and in each other's lives, come from very different backgrounds and circumstances, and yet they befriend each other over the death of Christina Applegate's husband, and then consequently, the other character loses her fiance, and it's got twists and turns. It's a dark comedy, but it's a comedy. And I think they handle all of the things about not giving up and the messiness of grief and the craziness of grief and the life not planned after loss and the people not planned, both good and bad, after loss. And they do it in an enjoyable, dark, comedic way. You'll laugh and cry out loud. It's not about suicide, but it is about life and death and life afterwards. So it's enjoyable, and it tackles the topics of loss and grief. And so those are the 2 main TV shows and series I'm going to talk about. The other ones are really honorable mentions in this category right now. I have to always mention Scattering CJ, the documentary. I believe right now it can be found on PBS. There's a website for the movie, because it is a documentary that can be shown in schools, and there's a whole thing that goes along with it. I've talked about it before, so I'm not going to, and this is an honorable mention, so I won't go into it in detail, but it is listed in the show notes, and it's absolutely, if you haven't watched it yet, this is your nudge to watch Scattering CJ. Hallie Toomey and her husband have both become friends of mine. They've both been on the podcast before. He was on a dad's episode, and she was on an episode talking about Scattering CJ. And Scattering CJ was a project that accidentally came about that involved her sending ashes, small bits of ashes of her son all over the world so that he could be a part of people's travels and experience the world. And they made an amazing documentary about it. And so I think everybody should watch that. The next 3 honorable mentions in the TV show and series are going to be Blue Bloods. It's been filming, I think, continuously since 2010. I think right now it's on Paramount and Prime. And it has been recommended to me initially by one member of my community, but now I have had a couple other people in my life agree that Blue Bloods handles the topic of grief really well. It's a cop show, so they do handle death a lot with murder and things like that, but they handle it really well. It's in my queue. I haven't started watching it. I've caught little episodes over the years here and there, but it was never a show I got into. And now it's in my queue because I'd like to start it from the beginning at some point and watch it because of the rave reviews on how they handle the topic of grief when it comes up every time. The other one is an enjoyable show called Somebody Feed Phil. If you need something to laugh about and just check out and lighthearted, entertaining. It's kind of a cooking travel show or food travel show. I shouldn't say kind of, it is, but with a whole different feel to it than many of them have, because Phil is just an amazing person. It does, it's lighthearted and entertaining, but it does have an honoring of loved ones and legacy kind of piece to it, especially after his parents begin to die, who have been such a big part not only of his life, but of his series and his career. Phil Rosenthal is the writer and creator and director of I keep wanting to say Somebody Feed Phil. Everybody Loves Raymond. And so he has that kind of comedy to him. That series was supposedly loosely based on him and his own parents. And so if that gives you any idea, it's a show to just put in your queue because it's enjoyable. And then I want to talk really, really briefly about Friends. I added Friends to my queue a while back and started rewatching it from the beginning when I binge watched the last season of Somebody Feed Phil. And because most of the things I watch tend to be heavier or even on the dark side, dark humor, things like that, I like to have something that I'm currently watching that when I have a night that just needs to feel lighter, I can turn to that. So I decided, since I have always loved Friends, it always makes me laugh out loud, that I would start watching Friends from the beginning again. And it has 10 seasons. I'm probably in season 6 right now, maybe 7, I'm not sure. But I have it on my list for caution and curious observation and, of course, entertainment. And it's currently you can currently watch all the seasons all the way to the end on Max, which used to be HBO and now Cinemax became Max. Anyway, the only thing I have to say about this from a caution / curious observation standpoint is, I don't know if any of you listening remember, but Phoebe Buffay's mom supposedly died by suicide. And so they talk about it on and off throughout the series, and usually it's a language thing. It's not sensitive language. It's usually fairly crass, a lot of times jokey and flippant. So to hear it joked about that much is a little shocking. Like, it doesn't keep me from watching it. But again, the lenses that I now look at life through and the ears that I now listen to things through are different. And so I catch things I wouldn't have even thought about before. And they talk about, like a lot of the shows of the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, they joke about suicide an awful lot, meaning from the standpoint of talking about how you feel about your day, or if I do that, they just say things that I find myself going, no wonder we have a stigma. No wonder when we need help, we have a hard time reaching out. We've had it ingrained in us that this is, it's just something to joke about. That we don't, we don't talk about mental health like it's serious when they're joking about it like that. So from that standpoint, it does make me just a little bit curious that I'm wondering how much these things have influenced the stigma that we live with now. That's it. So under books and reads, let's talk a little bit about that. The very first thing I want to mention is it's an online magazine, but you can actually buy it's a really thick, nice, like book kind of quality magazine, like one of those heavy duty special edition type magazines. It only comes out 4 times a year. They do have a completely free online magazine. But if people prefer to have and own the periodical, they can get it on Amazon. So both are, easy. You can go to the website and then you can find it on Amazon it's called Get Griefy magazine. It came across my desk when I saw that a dear friend, Dr. Lenore Matthew, was going to have a featured article in the magazine. And it's amazing. The contributors are amazing. The gal that started it is doing this as part of kind of a legacy piece. She has a legacy book out. I've just got it. I just received it in the mail last week, that you can leave behind for your loved ones. It's that kind of legacy book. So like I could fill it out. So it's because her mother died suddenly without leaving behind anything like this. And that was her inspiration. But then she went on to start Get Griefy magazine. And on the front page of her magazine website, it says, "Grief sucks, but life doesn't have to." And so she's speaking to my heart. And as of today, the plan is for me to become a regular contributing writer to the magazine. The next one comes out in August. It's coming out every quarter, so there'll be another one again in December. So she had January, April, August, and December. And I think you can sign up to get their newsletter so that you'll know when the next publication's out. But she is trying really hard, and in my opinion, after just two magazines, two volumes, she's nailing it so far. She's trying to get all sorts of loss in there, and it appears to be primarily women that she's talking to. However, I don't think it's exclusively, and she's tackling grief from all angles, and I just love it. So I can't say enough about Get Griefy, and hopefully I can also tell you that I will be a contributing author to that publication, hopefully by the next volume. A book I want to talk about that I've recently read is called Suicidal: Why We Kill Ourselves is the subtitle, by a psychologist and scientist named Jesse Bering. And it's not light. You can probably tell by the title. It's something that you would want to read if, like me, you are very interested in understanding the suicidal mind. It kind of speaks for itself when you read the reviews about it. Look it up on Amazon. If that's something, it's not as heavy of a lift as Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score. And it's not the same style of writing, even though there's that science aspect to it. This author does a very good job at bringing as much lightness and levity to the topic as he can. He struggled with suicidal ideation himself for many years, and he has studied the topic extensively. And it's, in my opinion, one of the better books out there right now about the topic from this angle. So if you're interested in knowing more about the suicidal mind, it's a good one. And it will be on my resource page very soon, too, if it's not already. As will Get Griefy magazine. Dying to Be Free is the next one I want to talk about. And I already believe this is on my resource page. It's one of the few books I could read some pages of. I know you all have heard me talk about reading being such a challenge in the beginning because you're just so fogged over that it's like we can't concentrate enough to take in what we need to. And I have heard there are a few of you out there that are able to read from the beginning. I applaud you. I think that's wonderful that your mind works like that. I'm sure that there's trade-offs to that. But I could not read and still sometimes struggle a little bit and default to audiobooks. But Dying to Be Free does have an audiobook, and it was recently brought up by a community member, and I thought, what a great suggestion. I need to talk about that. It's written by Beverly Cobain, who is the aunt of Kurt Cobain, who died by suicide as the lead singer of Nirvana. And I like it. You can read about it. It's a short book. It's a digestible book. It's a healing guide of sorts. I think it's called Dying to Be Free, a healing guide for survivors after suicide or something like that. It's digestible. It's relatable. She does a really good job. And I just think that it's a good one to have in your grief library. And it's not brand new. It's been out for almost 20 years. I think 2005 was when it came out, and it's still relevant. The last book series that I want to talk about, I can't not mention. It has such a very, very near and dear place to my heart, but it's the Because They Lived series. And this is the series that's published at the end of the legacy project that I do with moms who have lost their children to suicide. The full title is Because They Lived: Memories and Stories of Amazing Kids Lost to Suicide as Told by the Moms They Left Behind. Volumes 1, 2, and 3 are currently out. Volume 4 will be out in the next few weeks on Amazon. I can't say enough about how amazing and uplifting and joyful these books are to read. Yeah, be prepared to laugh and cry. But these are stories about these kids' lives and the memories, and they're told from the standpoint of their moms, and the moms do a lot of work to get to the point that these chapters get done. And I haven't met anybody that's read any of these stories that hasn't absolutely loved them. They are amazing stories. There's a link to it in the show notes. You can also find links on my website. But because they lived, you can never go wrong in reading these books to give you hope and to help you remember why legacy is so important, why talking about our loved ones is so important. And with that, I want to be able to take a moment to say the names of all of the kids that have so far had chapters written about them. In Volume 1, you'll hear about Aiden, Taylor, Gage, Donovan, and Nick. In Volume 2, you'll come to know McCoy and Noah. Volume 3 brings us Lindsay, Logan, Trent, and Maya. And in Volume 4, soon to be out, you'll get to know James and Jaden. And my Alex is in all 4 of the books as well. It's been my privilege to be able to put a part of his life in these books as well. And I don't think anybody could go wrong in reading any of them. They're absolutely amazing. So then the last kind of category, if you will, this is my other category, is I'm going to do something that was requested and talk about a streaming service, and that's Gaia, Gaia, Gaia TV. And I mean, Gaia is an app in the fact that if you're on a smart TV, all streaming services are apps, but it's not an app like in the traditional sense. It's a streaming service. It feels like an app and a streaming service met and had a baby to me, because the reason the person asked me to talk about it when I told them I had kind of gotten hooked on Gaia, somebody else referred it to me. It was referred to me by Jennifer J. India of 2 Inches Off the Ground podcast. And she had told me how much great content was on it several times when we talked. And I finally said, I've got to take a look. And I ended up doing the 7-day free trial. So I'm going to try to break it down for you so that if you are interested in the 7-day free trial of Gaia, which I get nothing from this, I'm not promoting Gaia in any way or any of these other books or anything, but I want to be able to tell people why I chose to watch it, why it replaced 2 of my other streaming services. And the question that I was asked to answer was, the person said, it's kind of hard to navigate Gaia. If you could give us any ideas of where to start or how to navigate it, that might help. So it is different than the way the other streaming services are set up. And I think the most help I can give is to talk about where to start. So I think the browse button is super powerful because it actually allows you to browse by category or title. The categories that are on Gaia are things like health and healing, yoga, meditation, spiritual growth, expanded consciousness, hidden history, supernatural, unexplained. So within each of those categories, there's a whole lot of breakdowns. Like, you can look into, they even have a recipe section under the health and healing section, where there's like 10-minute recipe videos with the recipe. It's like I said, it's kind of a whole different thing because there's all sorts of yoga that you can watch and do. There's meditations that you can listen to or watch and do. It's got like the best of these meditation apps and yoga apps and things. And now they don't have a lot of movies. It's not going to be the main place to go and watch like movies. There are some, like the Deepak Chopra documentary it's movie length. It's 1 hour and 45 minutes called Heal. That's one of the places I would start. I'd watch that documentary. But I would also consider looking at the browse category and finding things you're interested in. Start building a playlist of things that interest you, because it's pretty easy to figure out how to do that. The series that I would consider looking at that meant something to me, there was a Crystals series that had 8 episodes that I really enjoyed. And some of these things here's how I use Gaia. I put it on in the morning, and when I'm getting ready or doing things, and I can sit and listen to it while I'm getting ready. I can sit and watch short episodes just before I even get out of bed. It's kind of a brain reset for me. It's a way to start my day with mindful, meaningful content. And I'm not saying you can't watch it at other times of the day. My husband has a playlist that involves historical documentaries and alien type stuff that he's interested in just because he's interested. You know, he likes Star Wars and things. And so he has his own playlist that's that on Gaia. And so he'll watch some of that sometimes in the evening. But other than the Crystal series, I would recommend starting with, there's a series called Transcendence, and I think it's 2 seasons and about a dozen episodes. They have some really interesting categories there. There's an Open Mind series that I think has like 275. No, it's more than that. I think it's 525 episodes over like 25 seasons or something. It's called Open Minds. They tackle everything you can think of. Beyond Belief is one that I would consider putting in there. Ram Dass has a 6-minute affirmation video called The Art of Grief. There's a show called You're Not Your Brain that deals with that. There's a Healing the Mind that's almost an hour long. That's really good. There's a episode called Grief Relief in the Inspiration series. And I think that's kind of where I would stop with Gaia for now. It'll give you enough to start looking at it. Like I said, I think it's worth a 7-day trial. If you're like me, set a calendar the day before to remind yourself so that if you're not watching it or don't like it, you don't get charged. But again, I don't get any sort of kickback from Gaia for recommending that you consider it. But I consider it if you're looking for educational and or mindful content to help fill some of your brain. And I do it because I had too much mindless content going into my brain. And anything that I can do to reaffirm the growth of my brain in grief is better for me and everybody around me, to be honest with you. So that's how I'm going to wrap up today. And I know that it's been a struggle probably to listen to this cold that I'm fighting. I've tried the best that I know how. I hope it's not too distracting. I will try to wait and record other episodes after I'm done with the cold. But I appreciate you being here and listening. I would love to have any suggestions, feedback, resources, anything you have to throw my way. Please reach out at melissa@theleftoverpieces.com or message me on Instagram. And until next time, talk soon. So we'll conclude here for today, but I just wanted to say a few things before you go. If you're new to the podcast and have not listened to the very first episode called Intro Episodes Start Here, all the way back at the beginning of season 1, I would encourage you to do so that you know what to expect from the leftover pieces, because I do have several different styles of episodes that I record, and we do release weekly, almost all of the time. So I hope that you will come back often to join us in this community of suicide loss survivors. If you have not already, also, I would encourage you to check out theleftoverpieces.com, where you can find and have access to all of the things that I currently offer. Some of those things are online Zoom support groups, links to my books, educational opportunities that I'm adding all the time, as well as different downloadables and resources for all suicide loss survivors. And if you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the podcast, or you'd just like to connect with me for any other reason, you can do it through the website as well. So until next time, I just want to remind you that I know how lonely this grief is, but you don't have to be alone. Talk soon.